Today, Paul Rieckhoff is here with me in New York. Paul, the host of the Independent Americans podcast. It's always good to see you. I want to go through these issues a lot, whether it was today in the Rose Garden or even in that Univision interview last night from the president. First of all, executive action on the border. What do you make of that? Why not just take executive action already? He could have after the Senate border bill failed, but should he now?
Well, your colleague said every state is a border state. Every issue is an election issue.
It's true.
So I think this would be an overwhelmingly positive move, a popular move from Biden. I think it'll be something that would get bipartisan support. And we always talk about independents. Independents care about national security. They care about the border. Everybody in America cares about the border. And anytime the commander-in-chief is strong, is assertive, and actually addresses the problem, I think he's going to make headway with his base. Maybe not, but definitely with independents and Republicans that are going to be key to him winning the election.
Because the argument from this point, or to this point from the administration, had been, well, the Republicans should have done something. They should have passed that border bill. Reiterated today, by the way, by the DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas in congressional testimony. Let's listen to a short clip of that, and we'll come back and talk about it. Here's Mayorkas.
The bipartisan bill that a group of senators worked on, I had the privilege of being seated with them, would have delivered a consequence regime like no other. It would have been the first time since 1996 that our broken system would have delivered the much-needed fixes that we need to fully enforce the law and to deliver a consequence regime that will indeed deter illegal migration.
Right. So they were basically saying, all right, the Republicans only want to not pass this for political reasons. Now it seems like maybe the political situation has changed. The administration thinks we better do something ourselves.
I think they're waking up to the reality, right? And they're hearing from more and more Americans, and they're recognizing that their current path is not working. A lot of Americans view them as soft. I don't think Mayorkas is registering. He's become increasingly politicized. He's become like the new Fauci, right? And he's become hit from the right pretty consistently. So I don't think he's really moving the needle. If Biden comes out and announces executive action, I think it will move the needle, especially in swing states, especially in border states, especially among independents and people that he needs to move to win the election. And I think most Americans would view it as a good move. We see it in every city in America. This is an overwhelming crisis. It's a national security problem. It's a crime problem. It's a home state problem. And he's got to do more about it. And I think if he does, it'll start to register and move people.
What about on the wars? A lot of pressure to do something on the hostages, get some sort of a deal. But in the meantime, the president's trying to put pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu. Again, in that Univision interview, he said the following. Let's watch.
I think what he's doing is a mistake. I don't agree with his approach. I think it's outrageous that those three vehicles were hit by drones. What I'm calling for is for the Israelis to just call for a ceasefire, allow for the next 6-8 weeks total access to all food and medicine going into the country.
Your thoughts on that? Talk about the World Central Kitchen strike, obviously, but Netanyahu's making a mistake. He wants a ceasefire. Is it going to have any impact?
If I were running for re-election, I would not hitch my wagon to Netanyahu and Israel right now, because it seems like his support is falling globally, and especially in the U.S. Israel is struggling to maintain the overwhelming global support they had after the Hamas attacks in October. And I think, again, everything's an election issue. And if Biden wants to control this situation beyond November, he's got to find a way to connect with people who care about this. In his base, especially, which is where he continues to erode. We see that in primaries where people are voting against him. Muslim Americans are voting against him. If he loses a percentage point in a place like Michigan.
Yeah, especially with young voters. We're going to have Cornel West on later in the show. So that's the type of candidate who picks up a percent or two.
It's all catching up, right? It's all about putting together this game of pickup of all these little pieces. Yeah. If you lose one little piece, it could be the difference in a hard-fought election in one swing state in November. So I think he's going to continue to follow the winds. Hopefully it's also the right policy, but this is everything's about politics right now.
It is. You said it a number of times. It is an election year. And to that point, let me end on this issue because it's been the big issue, especially the last couple of days. That's abortion politics after this state Supreme Court ruling in the state of Arizona yesterday. I want to put up your tweet on that issue, and then we'll talk about the numbers that you think are important, especially for independents, which you talk about all the time. You talk about this Arizona ruling saying it's crazy, draconian, un-American. It's also going to be very unpopular with independent Americans, and you allude to some polling. It's actually polling from Gallup. Right. We'll put up, not from Pew, but the polling from Gallup there does show, and there's some among independent Americans, abortion rights are fairly positive in terms of their views on it, and you think this could be a big issue.
Yeah, again, I think this is an election issue. It may be the election issue, especially for women and for young people. And I think that independents consistently have been against, all abortion exclusion and the illegalization of abortion that's happened in states, and especially people in the military that have been impacted by this, where now they have to figure out what state they're going to serve in and how their rights might be affected. So again, I think this is a bad decision for America. I think people respect freedom, and when individual women don't have the right to have freedom over their own body, especially so early, most Americans, with the exception of people in the Republican Party, in the right center of the Republican Party, are pretty united.
Well, this goes back to an 1864 law that basically makes all abortion illegal except when the life of the mother is in jeopardy in the state of Arizona. But politically, the most important thing, this is that we're seeing this now in a swing state, in a state that matters.
In Arizona, you got Carrie Lake, running against Ruben Gallego. It looks like a pretty close race. Kirsten Sinema, the independent, is not running. So again, they're going to battle over the independents. It's going to be the Trump-favored candidate in Carrie Lake versus a former Marine, Ruben Gallego, who's a member of Congress in Arizona, and it might come down to Arizona. And all those issues will collide in Arizona and could tip the entire presidential
10,000 votes, whatever it was last time for Biden. Thank you, Paul. Always good to see you. We'll talk more with that, by the way, later on with Sean Spicer. And here's a look at what else we have coming up on News Nation Now.